It's exactly 6 p.m. now, Cairo local time. Welcome to Channel 2's English News Bulletin. I'm Angie Meher, and we begin straight away with the headlines. President Abdel-Fattah el-Sisi holds meeting with the Prime Minister and Minister of Education. Indirect talks between Hamas and Israeli delegations continue in Egypt. The Syrian army and the SDF reached ceasefire deal in Aleppo city following clashes. Welcome back. Now the details in full. President Abdel-Fattah el-Sisi held a meeting on Tuesday with the Prime Minister, Dr. Mustafa Madbouli, and the Minister of Education, Mohammed Abdul Latif. During the meeting, the President was briefed on the educational process coinciding with the start of the new school year, as well as the Egyptian German Schools Initiative. Sisi gave directives to exert more efforts to continue with implementing measures to develop the educational process. He was also briefed on the Egyptian German Schools Initiative. President Abdel-Fattah el-Sisi said on Tuesday that he received with great sadness and sorrow the death of Dr. Ahmed Omar Hashim, a member of the Senior Scholar Authority at Al-Azhar al-Sharif and the former president of Al-Azhar University, who passed away after a journey full of giving and service, religion and science. On his social media official page, the president expressed his sincere condolences and sympathy to Dr. Ahmed Omar Hashim, praying to Allah Almighty to bestow his mercy and forgiveness. The president also extended his condolences to all his relatives and his students nationwide and abroad. The funeral of the member of the Senior Scholar Authority at Al-Azhar al-Sharif and the former president of Al-Azhar University, Dr. Ahmed Omar Hashim, was held at Al-Azhar Mosque after the Dhuhr prayer before his body was laid to rest in his hometown in Sharqiya Governorate, with a large attendance of scholars and students. The Grand Imam of Al-Azhar, Rahmat al-Tayyib, paid tribute to the late scholar, describing him as one of the most prominent hadith scholars of the era, who devoted his life to service of the Sunnah of Prophet Muhammad and spreading authentic teachings. The Prime Minister, Dr. Mustafa Madbouli, presided over a cabinet meeting on Tuesday. The meeting tackled various political, economic and social files, in addition to reviewing means of implementing the presidential directives in adequate time schedules. Amongst the files topping the agenda are following President el-Sisi's directives to cover people's needs, in addition to intensifying the government's efforts to limit inflation and increase spending in the health, education and social protection sectors, besides monitoring markets and availability of various commodities. The meeting also reviewed development of increasing exports and nationalization of industry according to Egypt's Vision 2030. The cabinet also followed up on files of investment, industry, agriculture, and increasing the area of cultivated lands. The Foreign Minister, Dr. Badr Abdelati, held a joint press conference with the visiting German Foreign Minister, Johann Vadapol, following their talks in Cairo. Abdelati said they discussed cooperation in several sectors, including renewable energy and facing climate change, as well as regional and international issues of mutual concern. He said Gaza topped the agenda of talks and current talks taking place in the Red Sea resort city of Sharm el-Sheikh. Abdelati also said they discussed Germany's participation with Egypt and other states in hosting a conference for the rebuilding of Gaza. Developments in Sudan, Syria and Lebanon were also high on the agenda of the talks. Talks also focused on water security in Africa and agreed on rejecting unilateral moves which jeopardize African security. For his part, the German Foreign Minister hailed Cairo for hosting the Sharm el-Sheikh talks and the efforts to end the war on Gaza. He said the talks tackled boosting cooperation between Egypt and Germany in the fields of education and culture. The Foreign Minister Badr Abdelati also held a joint press conference with Slovenia's Foreign Minister and Deputy Prime Minister Tanja Fajon. Addressing the press conference, he said Cairo welcomes efforts by U.S. President Donald Trump to achieve peace and stability in the region and his full commitment to end the war in Gaza. Abdulati also said Cairo appreciates Trump's rejection the deportation of the Palestinians and the Israeli plans to annex the occupied West Bank. He said indirect talks in Egypt's Red Sea resort of Sharm el-Sheikh between the Hamas and Israeli delegations focus on reaching a deal over the implementation of the first phase of Trump's plan to end the war on Gaza. For her part, the Slovenian foreign minister said it was high time to end the war in Gaza. She said the Gaza Strip has been fully destroyed in the bloody Israeli war and there was no means of living in the territory. The Foreign Minister Badr Abdulati said that the talks between the Hamas and Israeli delegations in Egypt are discussing a security mechanism for the full withdrawal of the Israeli troops from the Gaza Strip. Abdulati was speaking during a joint press conference with his Dutch counterpart in Cairo on Tuesday. He said the talks aim to reach an agreement on the unhindered entry of humanitarian aid to the Gaza Strip through UN channels. For his part, the Dutch Foreign Minister said he appreciates Cairo's role as a permanent mediator in talks to reach a ceasefire in Gaza. Meanwhile, indirect talks between Hamas and Israeli delegations are continuing in Egypt's Red Sea resort city of Sharm el-Sheikh. The first session witnessed agreement to lay down a roadmap for the current negotiations. We have the details.
Peace talks between the Israelis and Hamas were resuming at an Egyptian resort city on Tuesday, the 2-year anniversary of the beginning of the offensive on Gaza that has seen tens of thousands of Palestinians killed in Gaza. The second day of indirect negotiations in the Red Sea resort of Sharm el-Sheikh are focused on a plan proposed by U.S. President Donald Trump last week that aims to bring about an end to the war in Gaza. After several hours of talks Monday, an Egyptian official with knowledge of the discussions said the parties agreed on most of the first phase terms, which include the release of hostages and establishing a ceasefire. The plan has received widespread international backing, and Trump told reporters on Monday that he thought there was a really good chance of lasting peace. Many uncertainties remain, however, including the demand that Hamas disarm and the future governance of Gaza. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has long said Hamas must surrender and disarm, but Hamas has not yet commented on whether it would be willing to. The plan envisions the Israelis withdrawing their troops from Gaza after Hamas disarms and an international security force being put in place.
The United Nations chief on Tuesday demanded the immediate and unconditional release of all hostages held in Gaza and an end to hostilities in the region. He was speaking on the second anniversary of the October 7th resistance attack that sparked the latest Israeli aggression on Gaza. Antonio Guterres decried the humanitarian catastrophe on a scale that defies comprehension. He said there's an urgent need to release the hostages unconditionally and immediately end the suffering for all. The Israeli occupation authorities detained a Palestinian from Tel Rumaida in central Hebron on Tuesday. Local sources also said the occupation authorities imposed a curfew on a number of neighborhoods east of the city. They said occupation authorities said the curfew is being imposed for a Jewish religious occasion. They also closed the Hamra roadblock on both sides. The roadblock is the main pathway for thousands of Palestinians working in different areas. The occupation army broke into a number of Palestinian homes and conducted wide arrests during their infiltration. The Syrian army and the United States-backed Syrian Democratic Forces SDF reached a ceasefire deal in 2 districts of Aleppo city, following a spike in tensions between the two sides. The Defense Ministry said Monday that the Syrian army had redeployed along several front lines with the Kurdish-led group in northeast Syria, adding that the move was not a prelude to military action, but to prevent repeated attacks and attempts by the SDF to seize territory. Recent clashes between the two sides have cast a shadow over a landmark deal signed in March between the Kurdish-led SDF and Syria's new government to integrate the SDF into state institutions. Ukraine launched a large barrage of drones for a second night in a row at Russia, which said Tuesday it had shot down 184 of its projectiles. The majority of the drones were intercepted over the border regions of Kursk and Belgorod, according to Russia's defense ministry. Early on Monday, Russia said it had intercepted 251 drones, one of Kiev's largest retaliatory attacks. The strikes left 2 people dead and sparked power outages, with over 1,000 people still without power, according to local authorities. Kiev has vowed to set up its strikes on Russian territory, particularly on Russia's oil infrastructure, in what it sees as a legitimate response to Moscow's daily barrages on Ukrainian cities and its energy network that have at times left millions without heating and power. The outgoing French Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu has proposed to focus talks with other politicians on the budget and the future of the new Caledonia, Lecornu's office said on Tuesday. Lecornu, who held talks with leaders of President Emmanuel Macron's centrist alliance and conservatives in the so-called Common Platform early on Tuesday to see if they can agree on a new cabinet that pleases both sides, will hold more talks later in the afternoon and on Wednesday morning. Lecornu had started the 2 days of last-ditch talks a day after his shock resignation in an effort to find a way out of the country's political crisis. Macron had tasked Lecornu on Monday with holding the talks, setting a deadline for Wednesday evening. U.S. President Donald Trump's latest bid to deploy the military on U.S. soil over local opposition is triggering a new conflict with blue state governors that is playing out in the courts as Trump envisages a country where armed soldiers patrol U.S. streets. Trump has already pushed traditional boundaries by using the National Guard domestically, envisioning a muscular role for the U.S. military in targeting illegal immigration and crime in American cities. His attempt to deploy California National Guard members to Oregon and Texas Guardsmen to Illinois is a sprawling use of his presidential power. Moving to our business news, the Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli asserted the government's keenness on following up on the outcomes of the External Public Debt Management and Borrowing Regulation Committee, based on the government's efforts to ensure sustainability of the downward path of the external debt and its governance to move in a secure frame. This came during Prime Minister Madbouli's meeting with Hassan Abdullah, the central bank governor, and ministers of finance and planning to follow on the committee's efforts in attendance of several other officials. The Deputy Prime Minister for Industrial Development and Minister of Industry and Transport, Kamel El-Wazir, reaffirmed Egypt's commitment to continuing joint collaboration with the World Bank, emphasizing the importance of projects that directly benefit citizens and contribute to sustainable development. Wazir's remarks came during his meeting with the World Bank delegation, where they discussed the ongoing projects and future cooperation in transport and industrial sectors. The meeting reinforced the strong ongoing partnership between Egypt and the World Bank, with both parties committed to resume partnership in enhancing Egypt's transport and industrial future. Egypt's stock market indices went up at close on Tuesday, according to reports affected by purchasing operations by foreign and local investors and corporations, whilst Egyptian Arab and foreign investors went into selling operations. Capital market for companies in the bourse gained about 8 billion Egyptian pounds, reaching 2,627 billion. The benchmark EGX index was up 0.01%, ending the day's dealings at 37,097.37 points. The EGX 70 rose 0.45%, reaching 11,339.39 points. And the more expanded EGX 100 index was also higher by 0.38% to close at 14,954.76 points. With that, we wrap up our English news bulletin here on Channel 2. My name is Angie Meher. Thank you for watching.